Okay, thank you, Councilman Green. I have the privilege now of introducing our keynote speaker. I think it's somewhat redundant because we all know this individual. We see him almost every day on CNN, reporting on world and national events, and sometimes reporting from dangerous locations. So this twice Emmy-nominated broadcaster is going to share some comments very shortly. I had a chance to look at his bio and resume, and it's quite staggering. I think the thing most important to me, that you're on the Mayor's World Heritage Council along with me. So, Ali, that's fantastic. We also had the opportunity to get Ali to sleep in his own bed last night, so he's close to home. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Ali to the stage.
You get to watch me for free for 2 hours a day, so this is like really second prize for you. But it is a treat to be in Philadelphia on a weeknight. Most of my weeknights when I'm not traveling are in New York. I actually had something written to talk to you about, but I'm going to be a little Trumpian about it and just throw it out. The things I've been speaking to people both about this and about Philadelphia and about the world and the country in the last few years. I think there are other matters I want to discuss that may help us in this. In this prospectus, there are some remarkable things, but in typical fashion, as you read through it and as you look at the four missions, there are ones that are going to speak to you more than others, and that's ideal, and that's why everybody here can get involved in different ones. But the one that speaks to me today, in light of the reporting that I've done over the last few years, is the mission of educating global kids with roots. And the reason why I say that is because there are two things going on in this country to which Philadelphia is uniquely relevant. The first one are the challenges that are very specific to democracy. This is a place which understands its connection to democracy, and because of the lore and legend and the ability as school kids or your own kids to go and visit the sites upon which American democracy was built, you touch it, you feel it, you have some sense of how it came to be, how we went from nothing or something that wasn't suitable into something that was meant to endure for hundreds of years. And we are in one of those times, we are not in the ultimate time, but we are in one of those times where it feels some days that our very democracy is under pressure. By the way, that's a global phenomenon. That is not just an American thing. There are a lot of people for whom they have felt that the dream of America or the dream of the world has not been fulfilled. And we need to understand that. There are a lot of failures on our part as a nation to have understood that properly and to have reached out properly to those who have not felt that dream. But in fact, there's a microcosm of that in this city and its environs. This is a city which for a very long time, until into the 70s, was in fact, well until the 90s, there were moments where it was in decline. There were moments where it was hollowing out. We had industries that were not renewing themselves and people who were leaving. The city is built in a way where, unlike Boston or New York, the wealthier you get, the greater your temptation to leave the tax-paying base of the city. So we ended up with very few other cities and big cities in the United States like Philadelphia, where there was an inversion in our tax base. And then companies started settling in the suburbs because people were living there and they wanted to live close to work. And we ended up with, you know, what you saw in Washington in the 90s and Detroit for a long time, and that is just a sort of a base in the city that was having difficulty supporting its policing and supporting its public education and ultimately supporting its housing crisis. And then you go through a cycle that you typically go through. Housing stock becomes cheaper, new groups of people move in, and they find it very interesting. Philadelphia is a gritty city. It's a place where you can see things and do things that you can't do in a place like New York, because New York has priced it out, or London has priced it out, or Paris has priced it out. But you get groups of people who come in and they love it. They love living inside a city that has food and entertainment and travel and proximity and universities and hospitals. They're still not 100% sure of the public education situation, so they will live in the city until such time that they have kids who have to go to school, and then it becomes a slightly different issue. And And that is something that you are dealing with, and it is something we're getting better at in Philadelphia. But actually, as I've been covering the teacher strikes across the country, we are not getting better at as a country. Our spending on public education as a percentage of GDP, as a percentage of anything actually, is decreasing. I was at the World Bank for their spring meetings 2 weeks ago, and they are launching a new measure of human development around the world. And you will find that the United States is not where you would expect it to be on a list like that. China is well ahead of the United States on that front. It has mandatory education, mandatory public school education, and they don't cut funding to it, they increase funding to it. You will marvel at the degree to which we have cut funding to public schools across this country. You will marvel at some of you won't marvel, some of you are teachers, some of you may be married to teachers, some of you have teachers in your family. Your mother was a teacher, is a teacher. At what we pay public school teachers and then expect them to do, because we've also cut funding to assistants and things like that. So Philadelphia can be the model to which we return in this country, and hopefully the world, because as the world searches for better democracy, Philadelphia can be the place where you come and be reminded of how people got together and figured that they would build a better democracy. But it can also start to be a model for how big cities, big urban populations deal with public education. China, we're all worried about trade and all sorts of things. Really what you need to be thinking about, particularly with China, but with a lot of other countries, is the emphasis that they put on public education so that their students are equipped to compete in the next century, and that's where our efforts have to be. This isn't about silly things like steel and imports and all that. That's a different story. That's one that can be handled. We are not putting that focus on our kids the way we should. So if a goal of Philadelphia becoming a World Heritage City is to meaningfully improve public education, that would be, to me, one of the main ones. The other thing that I was discussing with a few people last night at an event in New York, they both had a connection to Philadelphia. One was an artist, the other one was a lawyer who had gone to Penn, is the degree to which I travel to cities around the world where what I call grit is priced out. I'm not talking about mural arts. I think they're fantastic, by the way. I think the idea of urban art is a remarkable thing, but I'm talking about straight up graffiti people. You don't get that in New York anymore. It was terrible, if you remember. We had to clean the subway trains, we had to paint them a special paint that graffiti couldn't go onto it. And I'm sure a lot of people love that. But what we forgot is when the graffiti goes and the creative class goes and teachers can't live in your city and police officers can't live in your city and firefighters can't live in your city, artists can't live in your city, hairdressers can't live in your city, poets can't live in your city. That is what's happened. And by the way, when you go one step further than that, you go to London, where it is a parking place for people who are not sure about their regimes. So the extent to which people from the Middle East, from Russia, from China buy fantastic apartments and make the prices go up, well, that's interesting, except something like a quarter of the third of the city is unoccupied because these are pied-à-terres for the wealthy. Vancouver has a very similar problem. It's developing in New York. Miami has a bit of it. So on one hand, we love the fact that people from the world are coming to our cities. I grew up in Toronto. If the Chinese hadn't come to Toronto, Toronto would be a podunk provincial little town. Literally. I watched as it happened. On the other hand, we'd really like these people to come to our cities and live in them and partake of them and eat at our restaurants and run for office and educate their kids there. We're finding that our biggest, richest cities are parking places for hard capital. So when I see a city that's missing graffiti, it's a signal to me, it's a red flag that, oh, the graffiti artists have to commute in. That's a problem. And in Philadelphia, we have to be careful of that because people tell me about the gentrification of Philadelphia, but to me, the gentrification sometimes can mean renters have to leave. And when the renters leave your city, you've got a big problem. And we're not there yet in Philadelphia. We are a city where renters can live, where people of modest means can talk about how their grandmother lived here with modest means. I mean, we don't want everybody going from having modest means for 3 generations, but the fact is, you still want to be the city in which someone with a claim to this place because their grandmother was from here or their grandfather or somebody came in from another country, you want them to be able to live here. An example with these teacher strikes that I'm seeing are the degree to which places like Arizona and West Virginia and Kentucky have teacher shortages because they get paid elsewhere and they can't afford to live where they are. That's not where we want to go in Philadelphia. When we see beautiful old housing stock in this city, we shouldn't be thinking about the beautiful tower that my employer can build in its place. My employer, Comcast, builds very nice towers, I'll say that. But that's not the answer to everything. Sometimes the answer is refurbishing existing housing stock so that renters can actually live in it. In New York, we have Williamsburg as an example. Williamsburg used to be a great, fun, gritty, multicultural place. It soon will not be. I think those of you who know the place know what I'm talking about. It'll soon be a remarkable place for wealthy people and journalists and bankers and internationalists to live, and we love all those people, but we need a city to actually still feel like a city. One of the things that's interesting about Philadelphia that I hope people will come to understand as a result of this designation is a place like Graffiti Pier. You know, a place that is actually revered for the fact that it's a crumbled up heap that is now covered in graffiti that people go and take Instagram pictures of. That's got to be part of our city, right? In the aim, and Paris is one of my favorite cities in the entire world, and there's nobody who doesn't like it, but we have to be a version of those cities that is true to what it is about being Philadelphia, true to working class roots, true to labor, true to democracy, true to immigration. Those are the things we have to make sure that in our build to be the best and the prettiest, we still maintain those things, and we're well on the way. The efforts to which Penn and Drexel are going to build up their area and to make sure that the buildup of their area, both socially and physically and economically, expands into the neighboring areas near them that can benefit, that can grow because you've got two world-class universities there. That's the kind of important thinking that we need to use our money, our education, our philanthropy, and our hospitals to do, to make sure that we are making our cities smarter, we're making them healthier, we're employing people all about it. And then we've got to continue to celebrate the actual history that is in this city. That's not too hard to do because people who come here, if you go on TripAdvisor and you look at things to do in Philly, they're quite obvious. And we have to build on that. But I think that some of the things that this city is doing and building into the future are as exciting. And that's the kind of things those are the kind of things we're going to focus on. Some of them are backed by a lot of money, and the startup community in this city is remarkable. The things that the universities are doing, the center that Temple is building in North Philly is going to be a center for the community, a sort of a center of gravity for things to occur. But there are private industries in Philadelphia that are inventing, and they're doing the kinds of things that you think that people have to go to Austin to do, or places like that. That's the kind of city we want. Somebody can come to Philadelphia, they can live affordably inside the city if they wish to do so. They can benefit from the fact that there is great food, there are great communities, there's great transportation industry, infrastructure, we can do a little more with that, and we know that. But there's the ability to travel in and out of here, there are conferences to be held. We need to put this on the map in a way that people don't talk about it. Part of my problem as a guy who spends his time around the globe, but spends a lot of it here, is that it's not talked about that way. There's a quaintness about it. There's a, wow, I really like that. Went there for a weekend once, got great museums, really good restaurants. Okay, I got it. We now have to elevate this into, this is a center for innovation, this is a center for education, it's a center for healthcare, it's a place where young urban professionals can live. Some years ago when we were meeting about this in our initial meetings before the designation, there were some people around the room who said, it needs to be a little diverse, it needs to be a little more diverse, and I see that we've taken some strides in achieving that, but this city is diverse. The city has different languages that are spoken not just by people who've been here for 20 or 25 or 50 years, but from new people who are settling here. And that's the kind of thing we have to celebrate. There is nothing but great opportunity in front of us in Philadelphia. And I thank you for the work that you have all done to bring us to this day where we have got the designation, and now we have a plan that those of you in this room can glom onto and say, this is the part I want to take part in, and I want to lead, and I want to take the experience that I've got through work or travel and help Philadelphia really take on its status as a World Heritage City. No city deserves it more. This is now a beacon for American cities to do a great job on this, and I think this is going to be the thing that we needed to take Philly from a great assortment of things, all the ingredients needed to bake the great cake, and to actually bake it into a place that everybody wants to be. So thank you for doing this, thank you for supporting it, thank you for allowing me to be involved in it, and I look forward to where this goes in the course of the next few years. Thanks, everyone.